Young Americans today earn more on paper than their parents ever did. Yet for the first time in modern history, those bigger paychecks buy less and leave them with fewer chances at building a life. As housing, childcare, and education costs climb 3 to 4 times faster than wages, young adults are living with parents until 27, and millions are simply missing from the ranks of new households. How did generational progress stall? And why does your own future depend on this unraveling of the American promise? A paycheck today may look larger than the one your parents brought home, but what those dollars can actually buy has shrunk in ways that are hard to ignore. While wages for young adults have grown on paper, the cost of basic needs has surged far beyond those gains. Since 1990, median home prices have climbed over 400%, while median household income has risen less than 200%. That means what once took a few years of saving now demands a decade or more. The same pattern holds for education and childcare, where costs have multiplied at rates that outpace even the most generous raises. Essentials such as rent, groceries, and health insurance consume a bigger share of each paycheck, leaving less for savings, investment, or even small luxuries. For many, the idea of building wealth feels less like a rite of passage and more like a distant hope. The numbers reveal a stark reality. Even with higher salaries, today's young adults are buying less, saving less, and falling further behind. The gap between what is earned and what is needed keeps widening, making it harder to take the first steps toward independence. In the end, it is not the size of the paycheck that matters, but how far it stretches, and for the rising generation, that distance is shrinking year by year. Young adults are now reaching life's traditional milestones years later than their parents did. The average age for leaving home has crept up, with many staying into their late 20s. Marriage, once common in early adulthood, is now half as frequent among people under 30 compared to a generation ago. Home ownership, a marker of stability for past generations, has slipped even further out of reach. In 2025, the median age for first-time homebuyers hit a record high of 40. Just 1/3 of 27-year-olds now own homes, compared to 40% of baby boomers at the same age. These delays add up to a profound demographic shift. Across the country, household formation has stalled. Millions of young adults remain in shared apartments or childhood bedrooms, not by choice, but by necessity. The cost of starting an independent life has simply outpaced what most can manage. Even those with steady jobs and degrees find themselves postponing the basics, moving out, marrying, starting families, because the numbers do not work. This is not just a matter of personal preference or changing values. The data show a generation squeezed by forces beyond their control. The result is a patchwork of deferred dreams and unfinished plans, with each delay rippling through the rest of life's timeline. As traditional markers of adulthood drift further out of reach, the foundation for building wealth and security grows more fragile with each passing year. Across the United States, the foundation of independent adulthood is cracking under the weight of a deep housing shortage. A deficit of nearly 3.8 million homes means that for every young adult searching for their own place, there are simply not enough options to go around. Even when a listing appears, the math rarely adds up. In 1985, a median-priced home could be bought with 3 years' worth of median income. Now it takes 8 years if you can even save that much while paying rent. For young adults in major cities, rent alone can swallow 40 to 50% of monthly earnings, leaving little room for anything else. The ripple effects are visible everywhere. Shared living arrangements among 25 to 34-year-olds have surged by 60%, with crowded apartments and makeshift bedrooms becoming the new normal. It is not uncommon to find 3 or more adults sharing a space designed for a single family, all trying to stretch shrinking budgets just to keep a roof overhead. Municipal systems strain to keep up as affordable housing wait lists grow, and public transit fills with commuters travelling ever farther from city centres. The numbers make it clear this is not just a personal struggle, but a structural bottleneck. The promise of independence, moving out, starting a household, building a life, has become a privilege gated by a market that no longer works for those just starting out. For many, the dream of a place to call their own feels more distant with each passing year. When young adults can't afford to move out or start their own households, the effects ripple far beyond individual families. Each delayed move reduces spending on furniture, appliances, home internet, and streaming subscriptions. Consumer surveys show that young people living with parents spend about 25% less on goods and services than their independent peers. That missing demand is felt across entire industries. Furniture retailers, appliance makers, and home service providers have watched their markets shrink, while construction and renovation slow to a crawl. The result is not just a personal setback, it is a drag on the entire economy. Economists estimate that the drop in new household formation is linked to an annual loss of up to $130 billion in gross domestic product. That is money not circulating through local businesses, not supporting jobs, not fueling growth. The multiplier effect means that every dollar not spent on a new couch or microwave is a dollar not earned by a delivery driver, a warehouse worker, or a small business owner. Retailers catering to first-time buyers have been forced to adapt or close their doors. Even sectors such as home security and landscaping feel the pinch, as fewer young adults take on the responsibilities of independent living. What begins as a coping strategy for individuals, staying home longer and sharing cramped apartments, adds up to a national slowdown. The consequences reach from Main Street to Wall Street as suppressed spending by an entire generation stifles innovation, job creation, and economic momentum. The cost of delayed independence is not just measured in missed milestones, but in billions of dollars lost from the economic engine that once powered growth for all. More than 70% of all wealth in the United States is now controlled by people over the age of 55. This concentration has grown steadily since 1990, when working-age households held the majority of assets. Today, younger households dedicate nearly 2/3 of their budgets just to essentials, leaving little to invest or save. Meanwhile, $83.5 trillion is set to transfer from older generations over the next 2 decades. But the average age to receive an inheritance is 59, well after the years when down payments, business investments, or family expenses hit hardest. For most, the wealth arrives too late to change the basic math of adulthood. Locked assets and delayed transfers mean that even as fortunes shift on paper, the lived experience for young adults remains defined by scarcity, not abundance. The fallout stretches far beyond shrinking paychecks or missed milestones. For millions of young adults, entering the workforce during a downturn leaves a scar that never fully heals. Economists call it career scarring, a 10 to 15% lifetime earnings penalty for those who start out in recessions. Debt only deepens the wound. 43 million Americans carry student loans, often totaling years of future income. Mortgage balances for young homeowners now run 2.5 times higher than they were in the 1990s, eating into every paycheck. Globally, the picture is just as stark. Across OECD countries, youth homelessness has surged by 30% since 2015. As housing costs rise in cities from Vienna to Toronto, young families are squeezed out, fueling frustration and political backlash. Lord David Willits, a leading voice on intergenerational fairness, notes that age now predicts voting patterns more than class, as younger generations demand change in systems that seem rigged against them. Economic strain is breeding a new kind of polarization, one that threatens not just wallets but the fabric of democracy itself. Today, over 70% of United States wealth sits with people aged 55 and older, while most young adults face rising costs and shrinking opportunity. As generational divides widen, the promise of upward mobility erodes in real time. The stakes aren't just financial, they define who gets to shape the future. Share your thoughts below.